At the age of 32, Emily Grayson, a talented midwife from a small American town, was saving lives, but one day her world fell apart. A colleague framed her for the death of a patient. Abandoned by everyone, she was one step away from the abyss. But when a stranger knocks on her door with an offer that could change everything, Emily must decide whether to fight for justice or give up forever. Emily Grayson was 32 years old when her life unraveled in a single, devastating night. A skilled midwife from the small town of Redwood, Ohio, she had spent nearly a decade delivering babies and saving lives in the cramped, underfunded Redwood County Hospital. Her hands were steady, her instincts sharp, and her heart full of a quiet pride that came from knowing she made a difference. But on that rainy November evening, everything she'd built crumbled beneath her feet. The hospital was a flurry of chaos when Emily arrived for her night shift. The waiting room overflowed with patients. A flu outbreak had swept through the town, and the staff was stretched thin. She barely had time to pull on her scrubs before the charge nurse shoved a chart into her hands. "Room 4 stat," the nurse barked. "Pregnant woman, 38 weeks, complications. Dr. Reed's supposed to be there, but he's AWOL again." Emily frowned. Dr. Matt Reed, her colleague and sometimes friend, had a reputation for vanishing when things got tough. She'd covered for him more times than she could count, but tonight felt different. The air was thick with a tension she couldn't shake as she hurried down the hall, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. In room 4, she found a young woman sprawled on the bed, her face pale and slick with sweat. Her name was Tara, 22 years old, a first-time mom with no prenatal care and a history of substance abuse that Emily pieced together from the frantic whispers of a paramedic. Tara's breaths came in shallow gasps, her eyes wide with fear. "Help me," she rasped, clutching Emily's arm. "It hurts so bad." Emily's training kicked in. She checked vitals, called for assistance, and tried to stabilize Tara while barking orders to the lone nurse who'd followed her in. The baby's heart rate was dropping fast. "Where the hell is Reed?" she muttered, her voice tight. She dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. Typical. Minutes bled into an hour. Tara's condition worsened, her cries growing weaker. Emily made the call to prep for an emergency C-section, but without a surgeon, she was out of her depth. She wasn't a doctor, just a midwife thrust into a nightmare. Then, as if the universe conspired against her, Tara seized. Her body stiffened, then went limp. The monitor flatlined. Emily fought to revive her, chest compressions blurring into a desperate rhythm, but it was no use. Tara was gone. The baby, too. When the chaos settled, Emily stood trembling, her gloves stained with blood, staring at the lifeless form on the table. She didn't hear the nurse slip out or the distant wail of a siren. All she heard was the silence, the deafening absence of a newborn's cry she'd failed to bring into the world. The next morning, the hospital turned on her. Matt Reed materialized, pristine in his white coat, claiming he'd been delayed by a family emergency. He pointed the finger squarely at Emily. "She didn't call me in time," he told the administration, his voice smooth as silk. "I could have saved them if she'd followed protocol." The lie was so blatant it burned, but the hospital needed a scapegoat, and Emily was it. By noon, she was suspended pending an investigation. By evening, Tara's family had filed a lawsuit, naming Emily as the sole defendant. She stumbled home to her tiny apartment on the edge of Redwood, a one-bedroom haven now suffocating with despair. The walls closed in as she replayed the night. Every decision, every second she might have done differently. Had she missed something? Was Reed right? The doubt gnawed at her, but beneath it simmered a flicker of rage. She trusted Matt, covered his absences, even defended him to skeptical colleagues. And he betrayed her without a second thought. Days blurred into weeks. Emily stopped answering her phone, letting voicemails from worried friends pile up. The local paper ran a headline, "Midwife blamed in tragic death," and suddenly she was a pariah. Neighbors avoided her gaze, her mailbox filled with hate mail. She barely ate, barely slept, her once bright eyes sinking into shadowed hollows. The lawsuit loomed like a guillotine, threatening to strip her of her license, her savings, maybe even her freedom. She was drowning, and no one was throwing her a line. Then, on a frigid December evening, a knock jolted her from her stupor. She hadn't had a visitor in weeks. Most people had given up trying. Peering through the peephole, she saw a man she didn't recognize, tall, disheveled, his coat dusted with snow. His face was etched with something raw, gratitude, maybe, or desperation. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the lock. Every instinct screamed to ignore him, to crawl back into the dark cocoon of her couch. But something in his eyes, visible even through the distorted lens, tugged at her. Emily Grayson? His voice was low, unsteady, cutting through the quiet. She cracked the door an inch, wary. "Who are you?" "My name's James Carter," he said, his breath fogging in the cold. "You don't know me, but you saved my wife's life a week ago. I've been looking for you ever since." He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "I need your help, and I think you need mine." Emily's heart stuttered. She hadn't saved anyone in months, not since Tara. Her mind raced, searching for a memory that didn't exist. "You've got the wrong person," she said, starting to close the door. But James wedged his foot in the gap, his voice urgent. "No, I don't. It was you, at the restaurant, with the knife and the vodka. You brought my daughter into this world when no one else could. Please, just hear me out." The words hit her like a shockwave. The restaurant. A flash of memory surfaced. A crowded dining room, a woman collapsing, her own hands moving on autopilot. She'd pushed it down, buried it under the weight of her guilt. Now this stranger stood here, claiming she was a hero when she felt like a failure. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. James leaned closer, his eyes blazing with conviction. "A chance to make things right for both of us." Emily Grayson stood frozen in her doorway, the cold December air seeping into her apartment as James Carter's words echoed in her mind. A chance to make things right. She hadn't felt like a savior in months. Not since the night Tara died under her care. Not since Matt Reed's betrayal turned her life into a wreckage. Yet here was this stranger, his hazel eyes pleading, claiming she'd done something extraordinary. Her hands trembled as she opened the door wider, letting him step inside. James brushed snow from his coat, his presence filling the cramped living room with an energy she hadn't felt in weeks. He was older than her, maybe late 40s, with a weary handsomeness that spoke of long days and sleepless nights. "I don't know where to start," he said, rubbing his hands together as if to warm them. "But I owe you everything." Emily sank onto her threadbare couch, gesturing for him to sit. "You said a restaurant," she prompted, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I don't remember much. It's been a blur." He nodded, pulling a chair from her tiny dining table to face her. "It was a week ago, downtown at the Oakwood Grill. My wife, Lily, was 9 months pregnant. We were celebrating my promotion, her last outing before the baby. Then she collapsed. No warning, just gone." His voice cracked, and he looked down, fists clenching. The staff panicked. No one knew what to do. "But you were there, washing dishes in the back. You ran out with a knife and a bottle of vodka, and you saved her." The memory flickered to life, jagged and incomplete. Emily had been working the late shift at the restaurant. A dead-end job she'd taken to pay the bills after the hospital fired her. She'd heard the screams, seen the crowd, and acted on instinct. A woman on the floor, breathless, her pulse fading. Emily had sterilized the knife with liquor, cut through fabric and flesh, and pulled a tiny, squalling girl into the world. Lily had stabilized just as the paramedics arrived. She'd slipped away before anyone could ask her name, too shaken to linger. "I didn't think it mattered," Emily murmured, staring at her hands. "I just did what I had to." "It mattered," James said fiercely. "Lily's alive because of you. Our daughter, too. They're calling her Emily, after you." He smiled faintly, but it faded fast. "I tracked you down because I need you to know that, and because I have an offer." Emily's brow furrowed. "An offer?" "I own a chain of hardware stores across Ohio," he explained, leaning forward. "I've been planning to fund a private clinic in Cleveland, small, specialized, focused on maternal care. I want you to run it. Be the head midwife. Build it from the ground up." Her breath caught. A clinic? It was the kind of dream she'd buried long ago, back when she still believed in herself. But now? "I'm not who you think I am," she said, shaking her head. "I'm a liability. I've got a lawsuit hanging over me, a ruined reputation. I can't even practice legally until this mess is cleared." James didn't flinch. "I've got lawyers who can handle that. Money, too. You're not a liability. You're a damn hero. I saw what you did under pressure. That's who I want leading my team." The words stirred something in her, a flicker of hope she hadn't felt since the hospital. But it was snuffed out by a sharper memory, Matt Reed's smug face as he pinned Tara's death on her. "It's not that simple," she said, standing to pace the room. "The guy who screwed me over, he's still out there, still a doctor. He'll come after me if I step back into that world." James's eyes narrowed. "Who? Matt Reed," she spat, the name bitter on her tongue. "He was supposed to be there that night. Left me to handle a dying patient alone, then blamed me when it went south. He's got connections, hospital board, lawyers. I can't fight him." James went still, his expression shifting, recognition, maybe, or something darker. "Reed," he repeated, almost to himself. "Tall guy? Blonde hair, talks like he owns the place." Emily stopped pacing. "You know him?" "Not personally," James said carefully, "but I've heard the name. A friend in Cleveland mentioned him. Shady doctor, always chasing quick cash. Said he's mixed up in something dirty with a pharma company." Her stomach twisted. "Dirty how?" "Testing unapproved drugs, cutting corners. Nothing proven yet." James met her gaze, his voice low. "If he's the one who set you up, maybe there's more to your story than you think." The room spun. Emily grabbed the edge of her kitchen counter, her mind racing. Could Matt have done more than just abandon her that night? She'd always assumed Tara's death was a tragic fluke, her own failure to act fast enough. But what if it wasn't? What if Matt had tampered with something? Meds, records, to cover his tracks. "I need proof," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "If he did something to her, I need to know." James nodded. "I've got resources, people who can dig. But if we're doing this, you're in all the way. Take the clinic job. Fight back. I'll back you up." She hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down. Agreeing meant stepping back into a world that had chewed her up and spat her out. Refusing meant letting Matt win, letting Tara's death stay a stain on her soul. She thought of Lily, of the baby named after her, of the life she'd saved when she'd lost all faith in herself. "Okay," she said at last, her voice firm. "I'm in." James smiled, a real one this time, and pulled out his phone. "Good. I'll call my guy tomorrow. But first you should see this." He scrolled through his photos, then held up the screen. It was Lily in a hospital bed, cradling a tiny bundle with dark curls. "That's your namesake," he said softly. "She's why I'm here." Emily's throat tightened. The sight cracked something open in her, pride, maybe, or a spark of purpose. She was about to reply when her own phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it. An unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Emily Grayson?" The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Sarah Wilson, attorney. I've been hired to represent you in the Tara Evans lawsuit. We need to meet now. There's something you don't know." Emily's pulse spiked. "Who hired you?" A pause. "Anonymous client. Said you want to hear this. Can you be at my office in an hour? 14th Street, Cleveland." She looked at James, who raised an eyebrow. "I'll drive," he offered. As they grabbed their coats and headed into the snowy night, Emily's mind churned. An anonymous lawyer, a shady doctor, a stranger with a lifeline. What was she walking into? Then, rifling through her bag for her keys, her fingers brushed an old hospital notepad she'd kept. Tucked inside was a scribbled note she'd forgotten. "Check Tara's chart. Reed swapped meds." Her handwriting dated the night of the tragedy. Her blood ran cold. The proof wasn't out there. It was right here in her hands. The snow fell harder as Emily Grayson and James Carter sped toward Cleveland, the city skyline a blur of lights against the stormy night. Emily clutched the crumpled hospital notepad in her lap, her eyes fixed on the scrawled words. "Check Tara's chart. Reed swapped meds." The note, written in her own frantic handwriting from that fateful night, felt like a grenade with the pin half pulled. Had Matt Reed deliberately sabotaged Tara's care? The thought made her stomach churn, but it also lit a fire she hadn't felt in months, a resolve to uncover the truth. James glanced at her from the driver's seat, his jaw tight. "You sure about this lawyer?" Anonymous clients sound like a setup. "I'm not sure of anything," Emily admitted, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "But if someone's digging into my case, I need to know why. And this note, it changes everything." They pulled up to a sleek office building on 14th Street, its glass facade reflecting the swirling snow. Sarah Wilson's office was on the 5th floor, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Lake Erie's frozen edge. Sarah herself was a sharp contrast to the plush surroundings. Mid-40s, no nonsense, with a bob of graying hair and eyes that seemed to see through walls. She stood as they entered, extending a hand. Ms. Grayson, Mr. Carter. Thanks for coming on short notice. Emily shook her hand, wary. Who's paying you? I don't have the kind of money for a place like this. Sarah's lips twitched, not quite a smile. Let's just say someone believes in your innocence. They've got deep pockets and deeper grudges against Redwood County Hospital. Seat. We got a lot to cover. As they settled into leather chairs, Sarah slid a folder across her desk. I've been reviewing your case. The lawsuit from Tara Evans's family hinges on one claim. You failed to act in time, causing her death and her babies. But the hospital's records are a mess. Missing pages, altered timestamps. And Dr. Matt Reed's name keeps popping up where it shouldn't. Emily's pulse quickened. She handed Sarah the notepad. I found this tonight. I wrote it the night Tara died. I think Reed tampered with her medication. Sarah's eyes scanned the note, her expression unreadable. This is big, Emily, but it's not enough on its own. We need hard evidence, charts, witness statements, something concrete. Reed's got the hospital board in his pocket, and they're circling the wagons. If we're going after him, we're going after a machine. James leaned forward, his voice low. What about the pharma angle? I heard Reed's tied to some shady drug trials. Could that connect to Tara? Sarah nodded slowly. Possibly. I got a contact at the FDA sniffing around. There's chatter about an unapproved sedative. High risk, pulled from trials after bad outcomes. If Reed used it on Tara without consent, it could explain her sudden collapse. But proving it means digging into his files, and he's not careless. Emily's mind raced. A sedative? Tara had been unstable when she arrived, but nothing had pointed to drugs beyond her known history. Had Reed slipped her something to cover his tracks? Or worse, to test it? The idea was monstrous, but it fit the man she'd come to know. Charming, ruthless, always one step ahead. What do we do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah tapped the folder. We build a case. I'm filing a motion to subpoena Reed's records and Tara's full autopsy report. But it'll take time, and Reed's not sitting idle. My sources say he's already spreading rumors you're unstable, trying to discredit you before we even start. Emily's fist clenched. He's been doing that since the day I was suspended. I can't let him win again. Then fight, Sarah said, her gaze piercing. Take James's offer. Run that clinic. Show the world you're not broken. It'll make Reed nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. James nodded. I've got a team ready to clear your license. Say the word, and you're back in the game. Emily hesitated, the weight of their words pressing down. Stepping back into medicine meant facing her demons. Guilt, fear, the ghost of Tara's lifeless face. But staying silent meant letting Reed destroy more lives. She thought of Lily and baby Emily, of the spark she'd felt saving them. I'm in, she said finally, her voice firm. Let's take him down. Sarah smiled, a glint of approval in her eyes. Good. I'll set a meeting with the hospital's legal team tomorrow. Be ready for pushback. They left the office just past midnight, the storm now a full-blown blizzard. James offered to drive her home, but Emily needed air, needed to think. She walked the empty streets, snow piling on her coat, her mind a tangle of hope and dread. The note in her pocket felt heavier with every step, a lifeline or a noose. She wasn't sure which. She was halfway to her apartment when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Back off, or you'll regret it. Her breath caught, her eyes darting to the shadows around her. The street was deserted, but she felt watched, exposed. She shoved the phone away and quickened her pace, her heart pounding. By the time she reached her building, her nerves were raw. She fumbled with her keys, glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone lurking. Inside, she locked the door and sank to the floor, the text replaying in her mind. Reed, or someone working for him, knew she was digging. The realization chilled her more than the snow, soaking her clothes. Sleep was impossible. She spent the night poring over old hospital emails on her laptop, searching for anything tying Reed to Tara's case. Around 3 a.m., she found it. A deleted message she'd recovered from her archive, sent from Reed to an unknown address the day before Tara's death. New batch arrived. Test on next high risk. Usual cut. No names, no specifics, but it was enough to make her blood run cold. She forwarded it to Sarah, her hand shaking. This was the break they needed, or a trap that could bury her deeper. As dawn broke, her phone rang again. Sarah, her voice urgent. Emily, get to my office now. Someone just torched your car. Emily's heart stopped. She ran to her window, peering through the blinds. In the parking lot below, her old sedan was a smoldering wreck, flames licking the dawn sky. Neighbors gathered, pointing, but no one approached. The message was clear. Reed was done with warnings. She grabbed her coat, the note still in her pocket, and headed for the door. Fear clawed at her, but so did something stronger. Anger, fierce and unyielding. Reed had taken her career, her peace, her trust. He wouldn't take her fight. Not this time. Emily Grayson stood outside Sarah Wilson's office, the acrid smell of burnt rubber still clinging to her clothes from the torched remains of her car. The dawn sky over Cleveland was a dull gray, streaked with the last wisps of smoke rising from her parking lot. Her hands shook as she clutched her phone. The cryptic email from Matt Reed. New batch arrived. Test on next high risk. Usual cut, burning a hole in her mind. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was war. She took a steadying breath and stepped inside, ready to fight. Sarah was waiting, her desk strewn with papers and a half-empty coffee mug. "You're okay?" she asked, her sharp eyes scanning Emily's face. "Barely," Emily replied, dropping into a chair. "They burned my car, Sarah. That's not a warning. It's a promise." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Reed's desperate. He knows we're close. That email you sent me? It's a goldmine. Vague enough to dodge specifics, but it ties him to something illegal. I've got a forensic tech analyzing it, tracing the recipient. If it links to that pharma company, we've got him." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "What's next?" "Court," Sarah said, sliding a subpoena across the desk. "We're forcing the hospital to release Tara's full records and Reed's correspondence. Hearings in 2 days. Reed's team will push back, but this," she tapped the email printout, "gives us leverage. You ready to face him?" Emily's stomach twisted. Facing Matt Reed in a courtroom meant reliving Tara's death, every second of doubt and despair. But it also meant exposing him. "I have to be," she said, her voice firm. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. James Carter stayed close, his quiet support a lifeline as Emily and Sarah built their case. He'd hired a private investigator to dig into Reed's past, unearthing whispers of other accidents at Redwood County Hospital, patients who died under suspicious circumstances, their files conveniently lost. Emily pored over her own notes, piecing together the night Tara died, the odd delay in Reed's arrival, the missing crash cart, the way Tara's vitals crashed too fast. It all pointed to sabotage. The morning of the hearing, Redwood's courthouse buzzed with tension. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing as Emily walked in, her head high despite the whispers. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Townsfolk, hospital staff, Tara's grieving family. Matt Reed sat at the defense table, impeccably dressed, his blonde hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He met Emily's gaze with a smirk, and her fists clenched. He thought he'd already won. The judge, a stern woman with gray curls, called the room to order. Sarah opened with a razor-sharp argument, presenting Emily's note, checked Tara's chart, Reed swapped meds, and the damning email. Dr. Reed engaged in reckless, potentially criminal behavior, she declared, endangering patients for profit. We demand access to his records to prove it. Reed's lawyer, a slick man in a pinstripe suit, countered with icy precision. "This is a witch hunt," he sneered. "Ms. Grayson's a disgraced midwife grasping at straws. That email's a fabrication, unverifiable hearsay. Dr. Reed's a respected physician, not a monster." The room murmured, doubt rippling through the crowd. Emily's chest tightened. She'd expected this. Reed's charm had always shielded him, but it still stung. Then Sarah called her to the stand. Under oath, Emily recounted the night Tara died, Reed's absence, her frantic efforts, the suddenness of the collapse. "I wrote that note because something felt wrong," she said, her voice steady. "Tara didn't just die, she was killed." Reed's lawyer pounced. "You're admitting incompetence, then? A midwife overstepping her role, blaming others for her failure." "No," Emily shot back, meeting his gaze. "I'm saying Matt Reed left me to clean up his mess. He's done it before. He'll do it again." The courtroom buzzed, the judge banging her gavel for silence. Sarah introduced the subpoenaed autopsy report, finally wrestled from the hospital's grip. It showed traces of an unapproved sedative in Tara's system, lethal in high doses, undetectable without specific tests. "This drug wasn't prescribed," Sarah said. "It matches the profile of a trial Reed was rumored to be running." Reed's smirk faltered, but he held firm, whispering to his lawyer. The defense claimed contamination, clerical error, anything to muddy the waters. The judge looked skeptical, but the evidence was circumstantial. Emily's hope wavered. They needed more. Then, a commotion at the back of the room. A woman pushed through the crowd, small, nervous, her scrubs wrinkled. Emily recognized her instantly. Caitlin Brooks, a nurse from Redwood Hospital who'd been on shift that night. "I need to speak," Caitlin said, her voice trembling as she approached the bench. "I can't stay quiet anymore." The judge allowed it. Caitlin took the stand, her hands twisting together. "I saw Dr. Reed that night," she said, eyes darting to him. "He came in late, after Tara was already crashing. He told me to stay out of the room, said he'd handle it. But I peeked through the door. He injected something into her, then left. Minutes later, she seized. The room erupted. Reed shot to his feet, his face red. "She's lying. She's unstable. I barely know her." Caitlin flinched, but pressed on. "I didn't speak up because he threatened me. Said I'd lose my job, my kids. But after Emily's car burned, I couldn't live with it." Sarah seized the moment, presenting Caitlin's signed affidavit. The judge ordered Reed detained for questioning, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're adjourning until the hospital complies fully. Dr. Reed, don't leave town." As bailiffs escorted Reed out, his eyes locked on Emily. Pure venom, no trace of the charm he'd wielded so effortlessly. She didn't look away. For the first time in months, she felt the weight lifting, the truth clawing its way free. Outside, the crowd was a mix of shock and support. Tara's mother approached, tears streaking her face. "I blamed you," she said, voice breaking. "I was wrong. Thank you." Emily nodded, too choked to speak. James clapped her shoulder. "You did it. He's cornered." "Not yet," Sarah interjected, joining them. "He's slippery, probably halfway to a private jet by now." But Caitlin's testimony changes everything. The FDA's raiding his office as we speak. Emily exhaled, the cold air sharp in her lungs. Reed was down but not out. She'd won this battle, but the war wasn't over. Still, as she watched the snow fall, a quiet strength settled in her bones. She'd faced him, and she hadn't broken. Emily Grayson stood on the steps of the Redwood courthouse, the late January wind tugging at her scarf as the crowd dispersed into the snowy afternoon. The hearing had ended hours ago, but the echoes of Caitlin's testimony still rang in her ears. Matt Reed's mask of charm stripped away, his crimes laid bare. The judge's order to detain him had been a victory, but Emily knew better than to celebrate too soon. Reed was a snake, cornered, yes, but still dangerous. She pulled her coat tighter, her breath fogging in the cold, and turned to Sarah Wilson. "What now?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing her down. Sarah adjusted her glasses, a rare smile softening her sharp features. "Now we wait." The FDA's tearing through Reed's office, and Caitlin's statement gave them probable cause to expand the search. If that sedative ties him to Tara and others, he's done. Interpol's on alert, too. He won't slip away easily. James Carter joined them, his hands stuffed in his pockets. He might have already bolted. Guy like that doesn't stick around for handcuffs. "He can run," Emily said, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "But he can't hide forever." The fire that had burned her car still smoldered in her memory, fueling a quiet fury. Reed had taken so much, her career, her peace, but he wouldn't take her future. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The hospital, desperate to avoid a PR disaster, settled Tara's family's lawsuit, clearing Emily's name and paying a hefty sum she insisted go to a maternal health fund in Tara's memory. Her license was reinstated. The suspension lifted as evidence piled up against Reed. Sarah's forensic tech traced his email to a shell company linked to a pharma giant, exposing a scheme of unapproved drug trials on vulnerable patients. Tara hadn't been the first, just the one who'd broken the dam. Then came the news Emily had barely dared hope for. A grainy photo hit the wires. Matt Reed, tanned and disheveled, dragged from a beachfront villa in the Bahamas by Interpol agents. The headline screamed, "Disgraced doctor caught in paradise sting," and Redwood buzzed with vindication. He'd fled with a suitcase of cash, but his arrogance had been his undoing. A call to an old contact, intercepted by the feds, pinned him down. Extradition was imminent. Emily watched the report on her new TV, a modest upgrade from her savings, in her still Spartan apartment. James sat beside her, A pizza box opened between them. "Told you he'd slip up," he said, grinning. Too cocky for his own good. She managed a small smile, the first in months that didn't feel forced. "Justice feels lighter than I expected." "It's not over," Sarah warned, calling in on speakerphone. "Trial's next. He'll fight dirty, plea deals, sob stories. But we got him cold. You ready to testify?" Emily nodded, though Sarah couldn't see it. "Yeah, for Tara. For all of them." The trial came in spring, a media circus that drew national attention. Emily took the stand, her voice clear as she recounted Reed's betrayal, the night Tara died, the years of lies he'd spun. Caitlin followed, her courage bolstered by Emily's example, detailing Reed's threats and the injection she'd witnessed. The pharma execs turned on him, cutting deals to save themselves, and the jury deliberated for just 3 hours. Guilty, on charges of manslaughter, fraud, and reckless endangerment. 25 years, no parole. As the gavel fell, Emily felt a weight lift, not just from her shoulders, but from her soul. Reed's glare met hers across the courtroom, but it held no power now. She walked out into the April sun, free. Redwood embraced her return. The clinic James had promised rose on the edge of town, a sleek, modern space dedicated to maternal care, named the Grayson Center. Emily took the helm, hiring a team of passionate nurses and doctors, including Caitlin, who'd found her voice. Patients came, some hesitant, others grateful, drawn by the story of the midwife who'd fought for justice and won. One afternoon, as Emily reviewed charts in her office, a knock interrupted her. Lily Carter stood in the doorway, radiant at 6 months postpartum, cradling baby Emily. "Thought we'd drop by," Lily said, her smile warm. "She's growing fast. Want her namesake to see." Emily's heart swelled as she took the infant, her tiny fingers curling around Emily's thumb. "She's perfect," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. Lily hugged her, a silent thank you for the night that had bound their lives together. James lingered behind, watching with quiet pride. "You've built something incredible here," he said. "Reed's rotting, you're saving lives. That's the win." "It's a start," Emily replied, handing the baby back. "I owe you for believing in me." "You owed me nothing," he said firmly. "You earned this." Life settled into a rhythm, busy, fulfilling, hers again. Then, one crisp May evening, a new face appeared at the clinic. Dr. Adam Lane, a soft-spoken OB-GYN with kind eyes and a disarming laugh, joined her staff. He'd followed Reed's trial. He admitted over coffee in the break room and admired her grit. Their talks stretched late, their shared passion for healing forging a bond neither expected. By summer, Adam was more than a colleague. He proposed on the clinic's rooftop, under a sky streaked with stars, and Emily said yes, her heart full in a way she'd never known. They married that fall, small, simple, with James and Lily as witnesses, baby Emily toddling down the aisle with a flower crown. Years later, standing in her bustling clinic, Emily looked out at the family she served. Reed was a memory, his shadow banished by the light she'd reclaimed. She'd lost herself once, nearly lost everything, but she'd fought back, lawfully, relentlessly, and won. The Grayson Center thrived, a testament to her resilience, and Adam stood beside her, their own daughter, named Tara, giggling in his arms. One quiet night, as she locked up, Emily paused at the door. A letter had come that day from Tara's mother, now a friend. "You gave her justice, and me peace. Thank you." She tucked it in her bag, a smile tugging at her lips. The past was behind her, the future hers to shape. She stepped into the cool air, ready for whatever came next.